Marcus Thorne was a man who had learned to live with whispers, but he never expected the silence that would come when someone finally looked at him and stayed. At 42, Marcus Thorne commanded empires. His name alone could close billion-dollar deals. His towers pierced skylines across 3 continents. Boardrooms fell silent when he entered, not out of respect, though there was plenty, but from something colder: fear. The media had their names for him: the phantom tycoon, the untouchable. But those who knew him whispered something else entirely: the man with the face no one could forget. The scars ran deep. 3 jagged lines carved from temple to jaw, the legacy of a car crash at 17. His fault. No one else had been hurt. But the boy who had once been called beautiful had died on that roadside anyway. What remained was a man who learned early that every smile directed at him came with a price tag attached. Women didn't see Marcus Thorne. They saw his net worth, his penthouses and power. The scars were just an inconvenience they were willing to overlook for the right deposit into their accounts. So Marcus stopped looking for love. He built walls instead, glass and steel ones that scraped the clouds, and invisible ones around his heart that no one had breached in 20 years. Tonight was supposed to be simple: a charity gala at the Rothmore Hotel. Show his face, write a check, leave before anyone got too curious about his personal life. He didn't expect her. It happened near the balcony overlooking Manhattan's glittering sprawl. Marcus was moving through the crowd, his expression set in its usual mask of controlled indifference, when a woman stepped backward directly into his path. Camera first. Instinct took over, his hand shot out, catching both the equipment and her elbow before disaster struck. "God, I'm so sorry," she gasped, spinning to face him. And then she stopped. Her eyes, warm brown, bright with intelligence, met his. He waited for it. The flicker, the quick scan of his scars, the practiced politeness that would follow, the one that barely masked discomfort. It didn't come. She simply looked at him. Really looked at him. Not at his scars, not past them, but at him. As if his face were the most ordinary thing in the world. "Thank you for the save," she said, adjusting her camera strap with a small smile. "That would have been a very expensive mistake." Marcus found himself speaking before thinking. "Are you all right?" "I am now." Her smile widened, genuine and unguarded. "I'm Elena Rivers, photographer for the event. I was trying to get a shot of the skyline and clearly forgot to check my surroundings." "Marcus Thorne." "I know who you are." She said it simply, without the usual weight people put on his name. No awe, no calculation, just acknowledgement. They stood there for a moment, the sounds of the gala swirling around them like water around stones. "Well, Mr. Thorne, I should get back to work before I cause any more collisions." "Elena," he said as she turned. She glanced back. "Watch where you're stepping." Her laugh, low and warm, stayed with him long after she disappeared into the crowd. Marcus told himself it meant nothing. A brief conversation, a woman who hadn't flinched. That was all. But 3 days later, he found himself calling Daniel Rothmore, the gala's host. Marcus said, keeping his tone neutral, The photographer from your event, Elena Rivers. How do I reach her? Daniel's pause spoke volumes. Marcus Thorne? Are you asking about a woman? I'm considering hiring her for corporate work. Right. Daniel's skepticism was audible. I'll send her contact information. But Marcus, Elena isn't like the others. She won't be impressed by what you can buy. Good, Marcus said quietly. I'm neither. He waited 4 days before reaching out. The Thorne Foundation was hosting a fundraiser, and he needed a photographer. It was professional, logical. It had nothing to do with the fact that he hadn't stopped thinking about the way she'd looked at him. The foundation gala was held in one of Marcus's own buildings. All marble and floor-to-ceiling windows, the city sprawling beneath like a sea of lights. Elena arrived early, moving through the space with quiet confidence, adjusting angles and checking light levels. When she saw him, her face brightened with recognition. Mr. Thorne! Elena, thank you for coming. Are you kidding? This space is incredible. The architecture alone is worth shooting. He watched her work throughout the evening. She had a gift for making people comfortable. Guests relaxed under her lens, their smiles natural rather than staged. Even the normally camera-shy board members found themselves laughing at something she'd said. Midway through the night, she approached him. Would you mind if I got a few shots of you? The host should be part of the story. Marcus tensed. People don't typically want to see my face in their photos. Elena tilted her head, studying him. Why not? The question, so direct, so genuinely curious, caught him off guard. You know why. I know what I see. A man who built something meaningful and wants to give back. That's the story I'm interested in. So he let her photograph him. And when her camera clicked, he realized she wasn't directing him to hide the scarred side of his face. She wasn't asking him to tilt or turn. She was simply letting him exist as he was. When she lowered her camera, her expression was thoughtful. Can I ask you something personal? Marcus braced himself. Go ahead. The scars, do people really not see past them? In my experience, no. Elena nodded slowly. I understand that. Being a Black woman in this industry, there's always someone assuming I got the job because of quotas, not talent. That I couldn't possibly have earned my place. It's exhausting being reduced to what people think they see instead of who you actually are. For the first time in years, Marcus felt understood. It is, he said. Over the following weeks, Marcus found reasons to see her. A property launch that needed documentation, architectural photos for an upcoming development. Each time, their conversations deepened, moving from surface pleasantries to real exchanges about art, ambition, the strange loneliness that came with success. His staff noticed the change. You've been smiling more, his assistant remarked one morning. Business is good, Marcus replied. But it wasn't business. It was Elena. The way she challenged his cynicism, the warmth she brought into rooms that had always felt cold. One evening, after a long shoot at a waterfront property, the sky opened up. Rain hammered the pavement in sheets. Let me drive you home, Marcus insisted. Elena hesitated, then nodded. The drive through rain-soaked streets felt intimate. City lights blurring through water-streaked windows, soft jazz playing low. When they reached her building in Harlem, she surprised him. "Come up for tea. You shouldn't drive back in this." Her apartment was everything his penthouse wasn't. Warm, lived in, filled with photographs and books and plants that somehow thrived under her care. The scent of vanilla and cinnamon hung in the air. They sat on her worn-so couch, mugs of tea warming their hands, and talked about everything and nothing. Her disastrous attempts at baking, his childhood dream of being an architect instead of a developer. And when their eyes met, really met, with the kind of intensity that made breathing difficult, Marcus felt something crack open inside him. He wanted to kiss her, but instead he finished his tea, thanked her, and left. Because wanting someone meant being vulnerable, and vulnerability meant the possibility of discovering that, once again, he wasn't enough. The headline hit on a Wednesday morning. Beauty and the Beast, Thorne's latest acquisition. The photo showed Marcus and Elena outside a gallery, his hand resting lightly on her back as they spoke. The article was vicious. Speculation about her motives, snide comments about social climbing, cruel comparisons that reduced their connection to a transaction. They'd even dug through her social media, framing her as someone playing the long game. Elena read it once and closed her laptop. It wasn't the scrutiny that hurt. She'd faced judgment before. It was knowing what this would do to Marcus. She'd seen glimpses of the walls he'd built, the defenses he'd spent decades constructing. This would send him running. She was right. Marcus saw the article before dawn, forwarded by 3 different people before he'd finished his first coffee. He didn't open it right away. He already knew what it would say. He'd seen versions of this story his entire adult life. But when he finally read it, something in his chest twisted. Not because the insults were new, but because they'd dragged her into his mess. Elena hadn't asked for this, hadn't asked to be associated with his name, his scars, his endless parade of critics looking for blood. So Marcus did what he'd always done when emotions threatened to overwhelm him. He disappeared. 2 days passed, then 5, then 2 weeks. He buried himself in work, convincing himself it was for her protection, that she'd be better off without the spotlight he brought, that whatever had been growing between them would only lead to complications she didn't deserve. But the absence was deafening. He missed her, the sound of her laugh, the way she looked at him without hesitation, the warmth of her apartment compared to the sterile emptiness of his penthouse. One night, alone with an untouched glass of scotch, Marcus realized the truth. He wasn't protecting her. He was protecting himself, because wanting her meant risking something he hadn't risked in 20 years. She stepped aside to let him in. "You've been gone for 2 weeks," she said quietly once the door closed. "No calls, no explanation. I thought maybe I'd imagined what was happening between us." "I thought I was protecting you," Marcus admitted. "From the media, from my world, from me." Her expression softened, but there was steel beneath it. "You thought disappearing would protect me?" "I didn't know what else to do."
He ran a hand through his hair, the words spilling out. I've spent 20 years keeping people at arm's length because it's easier than letting them close, easier than finding out they never wanted me, just what I could give them. And you think I'm like that? No. His voice turned fierce. That's the problem. You're the first person in decades who's made me feel human, Elena. And it terrifies me because if I lose you, I don't know if I can survive going back to what I was before. The silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken things. Then, Elena crossed the space between them slowly, deliberately. Marcus Thorne, she said, her voice gentle but firm. You are not the sum of your scars, not the ones on your face, and not the ones you hide inside. I'm not afraid of them. I just need to know you won't run every time you're scared. His throat tightened. I'll try. God, I'll try. She reached up, framing his scarred face with both hands, not hiding it, not avoiding it, but holding it as if it were something precious. Then that's enough, she whispered. And then she kissed him. If you can't stand people who judge others by their appearance, who reduce human beings to what they look like or what they're worth, comment, everyone deserves respect. Let's stand against the shallow cruelty that almost destroyed this connection. The months that followed were a revelation. Marcus brought Elena into his world, not as arm candy, but as an equal whose opinion he valued. Business dinners where her insights often cut through boardroom politics. Gallery openings where her eye for beauty reminded him why he'd fallen in love with architecture in the first place. Elena brought him into hers. Friends who cared nothing for his fortune, but appreciated his dry wit. Art shows and Brooklyn warehouses where he was just another face in the crowd. Sunday mornings in her kitchen, teaching him to make pancakes that actually didn't burn. The media never fully left them alone, but Elena learned to ignore the noise. And Marcus learned that the only opinions that mattered were the ones in the room with him. One spring evening, Marcus asked Elena to meet him at the Rothmore Hotel, the rooftop where they'd first collided. When she arrived, the space had been transformed. Lanterns cast warm, golden light across the railings. White roses climbed every surface. A small table sat in the center, set for two, overlooking the city where their story had begun. This is where it started, Marcus said as she joined him. Elena smiled. I remember. I almost destroyed my camera. He took her hands, his eyes steady on hers. No walls, no defenses, just the raw truth of what he felt. Elena, I love you. I didn't think I was capable of saying that again, but you've changed everything. You've made me want to be more than the fortress I built. You've made me believe I could be enough. Her eyes glistened. Marcus Thorne, I have loved you from the moment you caught my camera and looked at me like I was real. Scars and all, every part of you is exactly what I want. They kissed under the lantern light, the city sprawling beneath them. For once, Marcus didn't feel the weight of being watched or judged. He felt only her, the certainty in her touch, the promise in her voice. But happiness, Marcus had learned, was never simple. 3 weeks later, Elena received a call that changed everything. Her father, a man she hadn't spoken to in 5 years, was dying, and he wanted to see her.
I have to go, she told Marcus, her voice tight with complicated emotions. He's in Vienna. I don't know how long I'll be gone. Then I'm coming with you. She shook her head. Marcus, you don't understand. My family, they're not like yours. There's history there, pain. I need to face this alone. You don't have to face anything alone anymore. But she was already pulling away, and Marcus recognized the look in her eyes, the same protective distance he'd used on her weeks before. The same fear. Elena left the next morning, and for the first time since they'd found each other, Marcus felt the old loneliness creeping back in. Days passed, then a week. Her texts were brief, apologetic. Things are complicated, I'll call soon. But she didn't. And Marcus, sitting alone in his penthouse overlooking a city that suddenly felt hollow, realized something that made his blood run cold. He'd spent so long afraid of being left behind that he'd never considered the possibility that Elena might have her own walls, her own scars, that had nothing to do with him. That love wasn't just about being brave enough to be seen. It was about being patient enough to wait while someone else found their courage too. 2 weeks after Elena left, Marcus received an unexpected call. Mr. Thorne, this is Dr. Weber from Vienna General Hospital. Marcus's heart stopped. Is Elena... She's fine, the doctor assured him quickly. But she asked me to call you. She needs you to know something. What is it? Her father passed away 3 days ago. The funeral was yesterday. But that's not why she stayed. Marcus gripped the phone tighter. Then why? Because she discovered something about her family, about why her father left when she was young, and she's been trying to process it alone, the same way she's processed everything in her life. But Mr. Thorne, I've watched her these past weeks, and I think she's finally ready to stop running. The line went quiet for a moment. She's at the Hotel Sacher, room 412. She hasn't left in 2 days. I think she's afraid that what she learned about her past will change how you see her. Marcus was already moving toward the door. Book me on the next flight to Vienna. If you believe that real love means showing up, even when it's hard, even when someone pushes you away, comment, true love fights for you. Don't let fear win, not in your life and not in theirs. 24 hours later, Marcus stood outside room 412 in the legendary Hotel Sacher, jet-lagged and running on nothing but black coffee and determination. He knocked. The door opened slowly, and there she was, Elena, eyes red-rimmed, wearing clothes that looked slept in. Marcus? Her voice cracked. What are you doing here? You said you needed to face things alone, but I'm here to tell you something I should have said before you left. You don't have to. Not anymore. You don't understand. Then help me understand. She stared at him for a long moment, then stepped aside. Inside the hotel room was dark, curtains drawn against the Vienna skyline. Photos were spread across the bed, old, faded images of a family Marcus didn't recognize. My father left when I was 8. My mother always said it was because he didn't love us enough to stay. I believed her. I built my entire life around being independent, never needing anyone, never trusting anyone to stay. She picked up one of the photos. But he didn't leave because he didn't love us. He left because he was sick, early onset Alzheimer's. He didn't want us to watch him disappear. So he walked away, came back to his family in Austria,
and let us hate him instead. Tears streamed down her face now. And I did, Marcus. I hated him for 20 years, and now he's gone, and I can't take it back. Marcus crossed the room and pulled her into his arms. You can't change the past, but Elena, you are not your father, and you are not alone anymore. She pulled back, looking up at him with anguished eyes. How do you know I won't run? That I won't do the same thing he did, push you away to protect you from my damage? Because, Marcus said, cupping her scarred heart with the same tenderness he'd shown his scarred face, I know what it's like to be terrified of being seen, and I know what it takes to let someone in, anyway. We're both damaged, Elena, but maybe that's exactly why this works. She closed her eyes, fresh tears falling. I don't want to lose you. Then don't run. Stay. Fight. Let me love you through the hard parts. Even if I'm a mess, especially if you're a mess. And for the first time in 2 weeks, Elena left broken and wet and real. Okay, she whispered. Okay. They stayed in Vienna for another week, attending ceremonies, meeting family Elena had been too afraid to know, uncovering the complicated legacy of a man who loved his daughter enough to disappear. When they finally returned to New York, something had shifted between them. The walls were gone, replaced by a raw, honest understanding that love wasn't about being perfect. It was about being brave enough to be broken together. 6 months later, Marcus stood on the same rooftop where he'd first told Elena he loved her. But this time, beneath the lanterns and the stars and the sprawling city below, he dropped to one knee. Elena Rivers, he said, his voice steady and sure. I spent 20 years believing I was unlovable. You proved me wrong. Will you marry me? She said yes before he even finished the question. The wedding was planned for spring, intimate, private, just the people who mattered. But 3 weeks before the ceremony, Elena received another call, this time from a lawyer in Vienna. Miss Rivers, I'm calling about your father's estate. There's something you need to know, something he left for you, and I think it's going to change everything. Elena's hand trembled as she held the phone. What is it? Your father wasn't just an academic, Miss Rivers. He was from the von Reichenbach family, Austrian nobility. And before the illness took him, he made arrangements, investments, properties across Europe. He left everything to you. All of it. The line went quiet. How much are we talking about? Elena finally whispered. The estate is valued at approximately 340 million euros. What happens when the woman who loved Marcus for who he was, not what he had, suddenly has a fortune of her own? Will it bring them closer or reveal truths neither was ready to face? Comment Part 2 if you need to know what happens next, because this story, it's only just beginning.